Hello everyone, Voodoo here, and I'm here today with the 11.2 Season 3 Havoc Demon Hunter Mythic Plus guide. Now, Havoc actually looks to be quite strong Mythic Plus this season. I don't want to say meta or anything like that, but it is a very viable DPS. You have the choice of being a very strong priority funnel target with a really good AoE, or if you're in a group already that has a ton of other funneling specs, you can swap to the other option and play a pretty decently strong AoE option that has constant AoE damage and some burst. So there's a lot of flexibility here in how you want to tailor your Havoc to the dungeons you're playing. Top of that, we're really good against Rot, and we have some pretty decent utility and Chaos brands. So today's video, going over rotations, talents, and a little bit of gear to help you get into the dungeons and start blasting on your Havoc Demon Hunter. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, help grow the channel. And with that, let's get right onto it. So obviously, the first thing you need is talents. So before you, here is the number one option really for Havoc Demon Hunter this season. This is Aldrachi Reaver. Low mover. You still do play initiative because it's so powerful. Now this is going to be the best build because of the funnel you get off of Wounded Quarry, as well as the AoE damage you get from Fury of the Aldrachi. So this season, Havoc's 4-piece, which I don't have at the moment. I have the pieces for, we're going to wait till Tuesday in case I get a myth piece on Tuesday to catalyze. So, you know, I don't have it right now, but it's very strong. The 4 set basically doubles all your slashes of Fury of the Aldrachi, while the 2 set makes it stronger. What this ends up doing is you get a ton of funnel through Wounded Quarry and a ton of AoE damage through Fury of the Aldrachi. So it's just a lot of damage all around. Reaver's Glaive also does a very strong amount of your damage. And then you have things like Immolation Aura, your Glaive talents, here like Fel-Scarred, Immolation Aura, and Rage Fire here, as well as I-Beam, Furious Gaze, Blind Fury, and Looks Can Kill, filling in and dealing a lot of damage that way. So this is going to be the best option for most cases if you A, are in low keys, B, hate Fel-Scarred, or C, are in a group with 1 or 2 other funnel specs already. Then you could swap over to a Fel-Scarred build, which plays the same talent tree on the right side, but does change stuff on the left side here, taking Collective Anguish, which summons the Fel Devastation instead of Sigil of Spite, and then obviously changing trees to Fel-Scarred. For Fel-Scarred, you do have a lot more burst thanks to Demon Surge, which means every time you I-Beam, you throw out Demon Surges, which is just like AoE, and every time you meta, you have a ton of them. Your tier set makes those even stronger by, again, giving you a soul, which gives you 20% increased damage as well as more Demon Surges. But the big thing here is Immolation Aura. The 2 set here increases that damage by 30%, and in our tree, there are so many talents that play with that. We have Flamebound, where it is a larger radius and deals more crit damage. We have a Fire Inside, which turns into chaos damage and gives you more Immolation Auras. We have Rage Fire, which builds off damage based on how much you crit with Immolation Aura. We have Growing Inferno, which just causes Immo to deal more damage over time. And then, you know, Burning Wound's kind of here. Not really that big of a deal because it's only on 3 targets, but it's also a thing. So with Fel-Scarred, you have a lot of the same things that Aldrachi Reaver does, but you are a lot burstier and can sometimes do more overall. Now, Aldrachi Reaver does a lot of AoE damage as well because of Fury of the Aldrachi, and the funnel is going to be better at helping you time keys, but in lower keys, or if there already is, you know, funnel present, then Havoc can do a decent job at that big AoE damage spec. However, there are specs that are better at it, right? Like it's not Havoc's strong suit, it's not Havoc's niche, that's funnel for us. But if you want to play this, it's here, and we're going to cover it in this build video as well. So with that, top to rotation. All right, so the first thing first is we're going to talk about our meta burst for Aldrachi Reaver. Then we'll move into Aldrachi Reaver rotation. Then we'll do the same thing for Fel-Scarred, and then talk about gear. Lots to do. So here we are on Mythic Plus dummies here. What we're going to do is we're going to use Sigil of Flame. You use any trinkets you have, then you're going to hunt in, throw your Reaver's Glaive, Chaos Strike a priority target, use Blade Dance, then dump all your Immolation Aura charges while inside Thrill, use I-Beam, use Annihilation again, then use Blade Dance, then Backflip and meta, Death Sweep, Annihilation, I-Beam, Annihilation, and then Sigil of Spite. And then from here, you're going to go into your regular rotational priority. All right, so we're gonna break this down into a few different sections. The first thing is going to be Reaver's Glaive priority. So Reaver's Glaive is the most important thing in Mythic Plus for Aldrachi Reaver because it does basically all of your hero talent tree. If you don't have a Reaver's Glaive up, you're basically just having no hero talent tree. Now, that's not to say that you should delay your burst if you don't have one. So if you go into a pack and you don't have a Glaive, don't worry about it. Just like do things. But the big thing with Reaver's Glaive is you always want to Chaos Strike first onto a priority target and then Blade Dance. The reason you're always Chaos Striking first is because you want to put Reaver's Mark up, right? Reaver's Mark enables you to funnel with Wounded Quarry. but also it gets the benefit of doubling Fear the Aldrachi to 12 slashes, which is a bonkers amount of slashes and deals a ton of damage. So you're always doing that in basically above 2 targets. We'll talk about single target in a bit. So the other reason you want to get so many glaives on top of the fury damage is that you get buffs from it, right? So you get the 15% damage amp from Thrill of the Fight, and this you want to empower your I-beams and your immolation aura with. So in practice, what that looks like, if we're coming into a pack here and I don't have meta, and I have a glaive, I'd go Sigil Flame, throw a glaive, find the highest health target, the most dangerous target, Chaos Strike it, then rip a Blade Dance, then use all of my immolation auras, as many as I can, and then I-beam. That way I'm getting all of my high damage events into the window, and then you do your I-beam window as normal, yada yada yada. Now the other thing that you want to do, if possible, you want to chain glaives together. Now the reason for that again is because of Thrill of the Fight. So you have your 15% damage amp, right? But this actually double dips on Reaver's Glaive itself. And Reaver's Glaive itself actually does a lot of damage as well because the 2-step bonus buffs it by 50%, which is actually a pretty sizable buff. And Reaver's Glaive actually hits more targets than a regular glaive does. It hits 4 targets, right? So that's actually a pretty sizable amount of damage. And this is physical, so it funnels, it does soul scar stuff. It's pretty strong. So if we, were to build up to another sigil here, we want to space it out so we get good enough thrill uptime, but we also want to use a ton of them so that we, are using it, right? So we throw it out here, we Blade Dance, and then Chaos Strike, then Blade Dance, and then, Immolation Auras and I-Beam. Generally speaking, what you want to do is throw your glaive when you're at 3 seconds or less of thrill. So we use Blade Dance, then we'll throw a glaive out here. What that basically means is in between each cast of Blade Dance, of Reaver's Glaive, you want to have an unbuffed Blade Dance and then a buff Blade Dance. So if I get another soul here, which I will very easily, we're going to use this Blade Dance and then we'll throw my glaive again. So there, it'll double dip, we'll Chaos Strike, and then Blade Dance will come back around and we'll be able to empower it before we I-Beam. So here we go, it's back around, boom, empowered it, I-Beam, Immolation Aura, put all our stuff in that window. So what's that doing? It's giving us a ton of Soul Scar damage, giving us a ton of Wounded Quarry damage, gives us a ton of Reaver's Glaive damage. So it's a very good way to space out your buffs, basically by doing Reaver's Glaive buff Blade Dance, normal Blade Dance, Reaver's Glaive buff Blade Dance, normal Blade Dance, Reaver Glaive buff Blade Dance, and so on. Now, if you're in a big pack that needs to die, you can chain a bunch of glaives together. Not really a big deal, right? Like you can do one after another, after another, after another. But if you're in a pack that's taking a lot longer or isn't as important, then it is good to space them out a bit and have them up every so often. Again, it's going to be a bit of nuance, right? Aldrachi Reaver is a little harder to play, but generally speaking, you want to keep Thrill up and buff your Immolation Auras and I-Beams, and use your glaives inside of Thrill whenever possible, spacing them out a bit so you get as much buff up time as you can, or you can just chain dump them if you're in a pack, big burst, hard pack, that sort of thing. The other buttons in your rotation here aren't very important, right? You will use Blade Dance on cooldown, you will fill with Chaos Strike, you will use Sigil of Flame and Sigil of Spite on CD, and you will use Hunt on CD as long as you don't currently have a Reaver's Glaive charge. So in this scenario, I'd throw my glaive out, then I'd Hunt, and then I'd go about and get my Thrill buff, empower my I-Beams, empower my Immolation Auras. You guys get the idea here. The other important thing, which is actually happening right now, never go above 5 charges of Immolation Aura. The reason for that is because above 5, they just won't work. It will cause some weird things to happen in your rotation. They just won't end up applying. It'll delay them and cause you to miss stuff. It's very weird, and generally it's just something you don't want to have happen. But that's mostly the rotation for Aldrachi Reaver. If you want a bit more in-depth stuff, I have a guide from a little while ago. I'll probably update at some point going through the stages of Reaver's Glaive. That's it for AoE, really. I will talk about single target, but I'm just going to cut here because why not? So for single target, the only difference is that whereas before we're always Blade Dancing second, in single target we're playing to maximize the uptime of Thrill of the Fight, and that means that we actually don't really care about the order of our Blade Dance or our Chaos Strike, right? It doesn't matter if Chaos Strike is first or if Blade Dance is first. All we want to do is throw the glaive if Thrill of the Fight has 3 seconds or less, and then if Blade Dance is up, we'll push Blade Dance. Otherwise, we'll just use Chaos Strike. The other big thing is that we also want to I-Beam before we get our Thrill proc. So what I mean by that is that if, we have everything up at the start of the pull here, we'll pretend I don't have a glaive, we'll hunt in, right? We'll throw our glaive, we'll pop our Immolation Auras here, why not? We'll use I-Beam. then we'll use Chaos Strike, then we'll use Death Sweep, then we'll backflip meta, Death Sweep, Annihilation. You know the drill at that point. So the reason for that is because I-Beam doesn't really do a ton of damage to single target. Like, it does good damage, you know, third best here. But the big thing is that Art of the Glaive here at the very bottom gives the enhanced abilities extra damage. So it gives 10% increased damage to Chaos Strike and to the first one, and 20% increased damage to the second one. And generally speaking, we want that to be on our meta abilities because they do more damage, right? 20% of a larger number is going to be more damage overall than 20% of a smaller number, right? Like 20% of 100 is more than 20% of 10, just as an example. In AoE, I-Beam does enough damage where we don't really care about this 10 or 20% increase, right? Death Sweep's not really an AoE button, doesn't do a ton of cleave, it's more of a single target button. But on single target, we play to maximize uptime and when possible, proc our thrill inside of an I-Beam. Now, that's not always possible, right? Generally speaking, it is still more important to just double up on your thrill and your Reaver's Glaive because that interaction is so powerful and Reaver's Glaive is so strong. But realistically, on single target, again, you're just using Immolation Aura for Fury. It doesn't really matter if you're buffing it because in single target, there's just like nothing to get buffs from, right? But if you ever drop Reaver's Mark in single target, you want to throw your Glaive out or throw it out so that you're keeping your thrill to fight up. That's basically it, right? Very similar to AoE, very similar in single target. You just don't care if you're buffing I-Beam, you'd rather buff the Blade Dance. The other big thing I want to mention here in its own section is going to be movement and initiative. Now, if you don't want to move ever, you don't have to. Like, realistically speaking, resetting this with VR is going to be good. It's going to be a damage increase. That's not like the craziest thing in the world. So if you want to just comfy zone, you know, don't flip, don't worry about it. But this is very strong, and Vengeful Retreat does reset its potential to trigger. So what that means is that whenever you hit an enemy, you get crit. Whenever you VR, you gain the chance to get crit from that enemy again, basically. So because we're not taking Tactical Retreat, Vengeful Retreat has a cooldown of 25 seconds. Now, the best thing you want to buff with this is going to be a Fury of the Aldrachi buff Blade Dance or Death Sweep. The reason for this is because that's just crazy strong and crit is really good. And with how many slashes you do with Fury of the Aldrachi, you're going to get a lot of value from that crit. And then, which of course, whenever you do physical damage, turns into funnel from Wounded Quarry. So if we just hunt in and get a charge here, we will already have initiative because we're in the pack. So we'll just grab it here. If this happens and, you know, you already did your initiative, other good options are Blade Dance because it just does, you know, a lot of damage. And of course, having it rolling for Immolation Auras and Death Sweeps and stuff like that. So in order, what you want to buff is you want to have initiative up for your Fury of the Aldrachi, buff Blade Dance or Death Sweep. Then it'll be like I-Beam and Immolation Aura, and then it'll be like regular Death Sweep or Blade Dance, kind of in that order. So you do want to use it, pair it with those abilities when possible. But again, it's not a huge thing. If you don't want to move, you can just, you know, forget about it. Other big thing is never Vengeful Retreat away. Always do it side to side or over a pack so you can maintain uptime. If I were to Vengeful Retreat away, you know, I'd flip this way, which isn't very good. Other choices are, you know, flipping side to side like this, or flipping through like this, or flipping this way. It's on cooldown, so I can't show you, but you get the idea, right? You always want to move in a way so that you are passing through or side to side the pack you're fighting or the boss you're fighting, never away from your target, because that's where, you know, things are kind of sticky and messy, and you don't really want to see that. So if that was a lot for you, don't worry, because we're here with Fel-Scarred, and oh boy, is Fel-Scarred a lot simpler. It's just kind of the opener's a bit longer, but after that, it's really not as bad. What I want to do here is pretty similar to the other build, obviously, right? It's the same Spectre talents. When we use Sigil of Flame as we approach the pack, use potions or any trinkets here. Then we're going to hunt in. We're going to use Blade Dance, then use all charges of Immolation Aura up to 5. Don't go above 5 or else bad things will happen and you'll get some weird delays. Then use I-Beam, grab your Demon Soul if you have 4-piece, Annihilation, Death Sweep, Backflip, and Meta. You're going to use Annihilation and Death Sweep. Use Immolation Aura to down to 1 charge, then use I-Beam, Annihilation, and spend the rest of your Immolation Aura charges, then use Sigil of Flame, and from here you're going to proceed to your normal rotation. For the regular rotation, things are pretty straightforward here. The only real awkward things are if you go into a pack dry here, what you want to do is Blade Dance first to spread around your Burning Wound, then dump all your Immolation Aura charges, then use I-Beam, and then basically just like trigger Demon Surge. Now, if you have your 4-piece, you can instead use Immolation Aura inside of your I-Beam, but there are chances that you don't get your Blade Dance back in time or don't be able to do that. So I would generally just, you know, use Immolation Auras, then use your I-Beam, grab your Demon Soul, yada, yada, yada. Now, the big thing here, the only real rotational challenge, otherwise it's basically like Hunt on cooldown, Blade Dance on cooldown, Immolation Aura on cooldown, up to 5 of course, Sigil Flame on cooldown, fill with Chaos Strike, is that when you have meta, right? So we'll do a little meta opener here, right? I-Beam, Annihilation, Vengeful Retreat, Backflip meta, Death Sweep, Annihilation, you know, everything I just showed you guys pretty much like a second ago. The only difference here is that when we're inside of meta, we are not going to use I-Beam again. You can see here that I do have the ability to use it again. It should come up before my meta drops, or at least pretty close to it. We are not going to use it again because of the fact that it doesn't proc more Demon Surges, and more importantly, doesn't proc our tier set. Outside of that, literally everything else for Fel-Scarred will just be push on cooldown, right? So boom, I-Beam back up. You want to have Burning Wounds up on your targets before you use Immolation Aura if possible, because again, you know, that's how you trigger it, which is why we only just use Blade Dance before going into our burst. And otherwise, right, I'm just here filling my Fury Bar, dumping it with Chaos Strike, and just waiting for I-Beam to come back off cooldown. Now, the other important part is going to be Vengeful Retreat. Now, Vengeful Retreat is important because of initiative, but like for Aldrachi Reaver, it's not that big of a deal. You just want to pair this with the I-Beam whenever possible. So we'll backflip, I-Beam, you know, Death Sweep, Annihilation, and then, you know, use Immolation Aura charges because we have them here. So it's really not that big of a deal. You want to just pair it with I-Beam whenever possible. Otherwise, pair it with Immolation Aura and Blade Dance because, you know, a lot of damage from those, and just push buttons on cooldown. You are not worrying about anything. You are just here to push your buttons. You're here to do a ton of Rage Fire, I-Beam, and Immolation Aura damage, as you can see by this chart. And you are just pushing those buttons till the cows come home. Not much thinking here. It's just basically just, you know, how am I lining up this Vengeful Retreat with my next I-Beam? That's basically it. Literally, no joke. Nothing else really that crazy with Fel-Scarred. Just don't use I-Beam if it doesn't proc a Demon Surge if you're in meta, and otherwise use Immolation Aura when your Burning Wounds are on the target. Don't cap Immolation Aura. Push all your buttons on cooldown. Happy days. Living good. AoE damage. And single target's the same, by the way. So I'm not even going to do a section on that. Single target's the exact same. Cool. All right, let's talk about trinkets. Now, the number one and best trinket for you, unfortunately, comes from the raid, and it's going to be the Antennae from Lumathar. Now, this trinket's really, really good. It's an equip that summons little orbs that go towards you, and when they hit you, they give you crit. The orbs are really easy to pick up. They auto-collect whenever they get near you. It's not really anything you have to play around. They just kind of happen, and it's just a very strong passive crit option, especially now that Pacemaker's been nerfed. Now, if you can't raid, if you don't get this from Mythic, there will be better options for you from Mythic Plus, assuming you can get them on Myth Track. Now, the other best one, at least in my opinion, this could change as we go further into the season, is going to be Soleil's Secret Technique, if someone can give you either Critical Strike or Mastery. The reason for this is that Havoc's not really a burst spec. There are some really good on-use trinkets, which we will talk about in a second, but generally speaking, your damage is very flat and spread out over, you know, a longer period of time. So on-use trinkets, which give you value in burst windows, are not as valuable for Aldrachi Reaver. They are for Fel-Scarred, I bet. But flat stats all the time are very valuable for Aldrachi Reaver. So I believe Soleil's and Antenna are your best two. Soleil is giving you crit or mastery, otherwise it's not that great. Other really good options, especially coming from Mythic Plus, is the Cursed Idol from Halls of Atonement. Now, I didn't cover this in my trinket video or my gearing video on Friday. Reason for that is because A, they just recently buffed it, and B, I recorded that video way in advance because I was going to be busy with grinding out Season 1 as well as some other stuff happening in real life. But this trinket was buffed. It's very, very strong and is probably one of your best on uses. It's a minute and a half. You would just use it on cooldown. You don't really want to pair it with anything. Just use it on your next available I-Beam or Reaver's Glaive, basically. What it does is there's a small channel that is hasted, which then smashes the ground, dealing damage and giving you crit based on how many enemies you hit. There is a baseline level of crit, but the more enemies you hit, the more you get. And if you hit all 5, it's very, very, very strong. It's very bad on single target, but when you're hitting 5 enemies with it all the time, it's crazy good. The other good on uses do come from the raid. Now, Raz's Ritual Forge is probably the other best one, specifically for Fel-Scarred, and pairing this with your 2-minute meta will cause a lot of burst damage because Raz just gives you a metric, like, ton of agility on use. It's a 2-minute, pairs perfectly with Fel-Scarred, and it gives you like 40k agility whenever you use it. And the downside of having to like spend some health to do it really doesn't matter because you're going to leech it all back right away. Other really good on use is the Nether Prism. This one is more so a bit of agility for every single one of your I-beams rather than doing it with your big meta. But you can, of course, change and be like, hey, you know, I got a big pull coming up in 2 pulls here. I got a hard pull coming up. I'll save my trinket, get more value on that bigger pull. So it gives you a lot of variability and optionality on how you want to do that burst damage and how you want to do that buff, which can give you a lot of control and a lot of variable moments sort of key. If you only do Mythic Plus, the other good option for an unused trinket is Signet of the Priory. This is a 2-minute one for Fel-Scarred. It's fine for Aldrachi Reaver, of course. You'd rather have Cursed Stone Idol, but it is very good. And then if all else fails, Pacemaker is also an okay option. It did get nerfed. Rest in peace, Pace. But it's still like a fine crit trinket. It's just, you know, 10% worse than it was last season. And Antennae is around and is very, very strong. Those are your trinkets. Embellishments, you just want to use 2 Dawn Silk lining. That's basically it. Dawn Thread, Silk, Dawn Silk, the crit one. Put it on your wrists and put it on your belt. Unfortunately, those are the only 2 slots you can craft on. If it's early on here and you don't have the Reshi Wrap boots from Raid, or you'll never get them, craft them on your boots instead. So that way you can take advantage of the Delve belt for as long as possible. Really, realistically speaking, even getting those boots on normal or heroic or LFR are going to be good. So eventually you will craft over your belt, although I will still craft a weapon if I were you for your first option, because a mythic weapon is very, very strong. Stats, critical strike, mastery, that's it. End of story. Verse is your 3rd best, haste is your worst, but crit and mastery are so far ahead, like talking to the other 2 is just wasting your time, really. Yeah, those are stats, those are gearing basically, and go us. So that is going to be it for my Mythic Plus guide. Now I do intend on having a more in-depth, nuanced one coming out later this season where I talk about like dungeon specific stuff and like really advanced nitty-gritty topics, but I hope this gives you a good primer for what to do for Havoc for both Aldrachi Reaver and Fel-Scarred and gearing and stuff like that in Mythic Plus in Season 3. Again, Havoc looks pretty good, right? Especially with once you have 4-piece and can really take advantage of Aldrachi Reaver's funnel. Havoc seems like a pretty strong option to bring to your keys. It brings the best funnel in the game, although Arcane and Assassination do also bring funnel, but bring other things that Havoc doesn't. But Havoc has a very strong niche, has really good damage output, and is fairly survivable as long as we're talking about like one-shots, which is kind of Havoc's weakness. So again, very, very good. Hope this helped. If you have any questions, drop them down below. You can also check out the Havoc Discord, where I wrote the fact for the Wildhat guy, which Shad wrote. Shad is also a great person, great guy. He has his own YouTube channel. #1 DH from last season in terms of IO for Havoc. So, you know, really knowledgeable source there. And Icy Veins also around Word Up writes that. He's pretty good. Yeah, so lots of sources out there for you to get information if you need it. Ask me questions in my own Discord as well, and I'll be streaming live on Twitch pretty often over the next few weeks, doing Raid, doing keys, so that's in the description as well, so go follow me there. That's kind of it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you have a good week. Good luck on your vaults tomorrow. I'll be live doing Raid tomorrow night, and yeah, so peace. A big thank you to all of my channel members. Thank you to Correlated, Alexander Trifonovich, Fear Redefined, Loose Change, Zooligan, Gabrielle Correa, Magic Man 133, Falafadar, and Dark Terror. Again, a big thank you to everyone who watches my videos, but especially a big thank you for people who are helping support the channel. If you want to support the channel, become a channel member down below for a few perks. More to come in the future. And with that, again, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you guys later. Peace.